Hello again, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, we've got high wind warnings out here through this evening along the North Gulf Coast, the central southeast coast there, and the inside waters. That's out until 6 p.m. this evening for continued possible wind gusts 60 miles an hour or greater, and out through this evening for the Juneau Admiralty Island area. And then they kick into effect later this evening into tomorrow morning for Lynn Canal Glacier Bay area, again for wind gusts above 60 miles an hour out of the south. Otherwise, there are no watches, warnings, or advisories out for the remainder of the state through tomorrow and tomorrow night, probably, through tomorrow night at least. And satellite imagery showing strong low pressure moving into the Gulf of Alaska there at that very active frontal boundary, pushing into the northern panhandle. Actually looks like it's already made landfall on the north coast as of mid-afternoon Sunday. And that brought the heavy wind and strong rains heavy rain, both heavy rain and wind to the southeast and north Gulf Coast today, with rainfall amounts of 2 inches or more in the last 12 hours, places like Ketchikan and Petersburg, with Haines picking up over an inch of precipitation today during the same period, with winds gusting 50 to 55 miles an hour along the coast, or 50 to 60 miles an hour, and even stronger on the North Gulf Coast there. Middleton Island had a peak wind gust of 76 miles per hour, and the strong winds and moderate amounts of heavy rains extended back to Kodiak. They had a little over an inch in the last 12 hours of precipitation with 55 mile an hour wind gusts, and lighter rainfall amounts up along the North Gulf Coast. Kenai Peninsula Seward picked up about a third of an inch, with a half an inch falling at Portage, and some rain got as far into areas of Bristol Bay, but much lighter amounts of precipitation. You can see a fair amount of sunshine up over the northwest and central interior areas up along the Yukon River, with a few clouds. And Norton Sound, southern Seward Peninsula, clear skies this afternoon, and not too bad up over the northwest. The North Slope, generally cloudy, a few flurries and light snow showers, but nothing too significant. And clouds and showers and light rain areas there from Nunivak Island down toward the Pribilofs, mostly scattered showers. It looks like clearing there for the eastern and central Aleutians all the way out to Shemya. Not a bad day today out that way. And on the chart, there's that strong 959 millibar low centered south of Middleton Island, with rain, heavy and strong winds again pushing into the southeast coast and along the North Gulf Coast today. And precipitation getting into the southern Kenai Peninsula and Cook Inlet as well, back toward Kamishak Bay. But kind of getting cut off there at Turnagain Arm. Some moisture did get into the east upper Tanana Valley over toward Northway and Tok. About a tenth of an inch of precipitation fell there as it backed in from the east. But fair over the interior. A little breezy, higher elevations of the north central interior. Flurries along the Arctic coast. For tonight, that low kind of splits. We've got one low hanging back over the Kenai Peninsula. The other one kicks off to the northeast up toward the Great Slave Lake, along with a frontal boundary well east of the area. But good southwest flow continues the tight gradient and heavy rain tonight over the northern panhandle, eastern North Gulf Coast, and improving over the southern panhandle, with light snow possible eastern Beaufort Sea coast into the North Slope, dry over the western interior to Bristol Bay with some clearing. Showers and light rain, fog and drizzle continue for the eastern Aleutians and eastern Bering Sea. High pressure farther to the west will try to push eastward ahead of the next system, but still it'll be a little unsettled and cloudy for the eastern Aleutians from the Pribilofs to the Alaska Peninsula. Kodiak Island, a few showers. Showers and light rain continuing from the North Gulf Coast tomorrow, especially the eastern North Gulf Coast into the northern panhandle, but high pressure will result in some clearing and light winds with possible sunshine there for the southern panhandle. A few flurries linger up over the eastern North Slope, and some scattered rain and snow showers over the upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country, but nothing too significant. And moving on to the outlook for Tuesday. Next system pushing northward there, and again, that's going to bring the storm force winds back into the North Gulf Coast areas and gales on the eastern North Gulf Coast. And otherwise, look for increasing wind and rain, especially over the central and southern panhandle as far as the rain goes with that moisture coming from the warm front. But it should start out at least partly sunny along the North Gulf Coast Copper River Basin during the early morning part of Tuesday. Showers with a weak trough will extend along the western Alaska Range into the Kuskokwim Valley on down toward Togiak Bay and the Alaska Peninsula. It'll be another fair day over the interior with just a slight chance of some isolated rain or snow showers on the Arctic coast. And for the lows for tomorrow morning, anywhere from 20 to 30 degrees for the north slope in the Arctic coast and 30 to 35 or so in the central interior, mid-30s over the southwest interior to near 40 along the coast and the Pribilofs. And for the panhandle, mid to upper 40s and upper 30s to lower 40s for the southeast or for the south central Alaska. Highs tomorrow, mid-50s to lower 60s there over the panhandle with near 50 for the Copper River Basin, 40s much of the interior areas, and lower to mid-30s from the Brooks Range on out to the Arctic coast. And out west, highs will be mostly in the upper 40s to maybe near 50 there for the Aleutians and lower 50s for the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, and Bristol Bay. Lows the following morning on Tuesday, 20s for the most part, Brooks Range out to the Arctic coast, and upper 20s to mid-30s for the central interior areas into the Kuskokwim Valley, upper 30s along the coast, and mid-30s to lower 40s, south central Alaska, upper 20s to lower 30s, Copper River Basin, and mostly in the lower to mid-40s there for the Panhandle. Lower 40s, Kodiak Island, southern Kenai Peninsula areas, and lower 40s also for the Alaska Peninsula, Sandpoint, low 45, and 43, a little milder there for Shemya. That'll be followed by highs Tuesday afternoon in the upper 50s to lower 60s, possibly for the Panhandle, and mid-50s, south central Alaska, lower 50s there in the Copper River Basin area, lower to mid-50s up in the Tanana Valley, mid-40s for the upper Yukon, Koyukuk, and Kobuk Valley regions, with mid-30s for the Brooks Range, a little warmer, and near freezing on the eastern Arctic coast, and mid-30s to near 40 on the western coast there, with highs mostly in the...
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather. IFR north slope on out to the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, otherwise marginal VFR central and western Arctic coast, and a band there through the southeastern Chukchi Sea, through the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island, and covering just about all of the eastern Bering Sea from the central areas on down to the Fox Islands, Atka right on the edge, IFR along the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, Fognak Island IFR, Barren, roughly just north of the Barren Islands, around Kamishak Bay to Port Moller. Northward, you're in VFR all the way up to the Brooks Range. Some lingering marginal VFR early there for the eastern Alaska Range, upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country. IFR, Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast, maybe the southern Copper River Basin and the northeastern Panhandle. And along the southern areas of the southeast coast, looking pretty good tomorrow morning. And a little bit more marginal VFR spreads a little farther south, but Prince of Wales Island stays VFR. Marginal VFR up to northern Lynn Canal, IFR hanging in there toward the passes, and also over the North Gulf Coast, the Prince William Sound IFR with continued southeasterly flow, and into the southern Copper River Basin, Wrangell Mountains, marginal VFR, eastern interior, with the exception of the Yukon Flats and eastern Brooks Range, IFR, eastern Gulf Coast, some on the west side, eastern Arctic coast, some IFR also on the west side, marginal VFR for the north slope on out toward the Arctic coast. And IFR, again, over the Seward Peninsula, a little bit farther to the east, down across Yukon Delta, western areas, Nunivak Island, Kuskokwim Delta in the valley looks good, into Cook Inlet VFR, Kodiak Island, marginal VFR for the afternoon, as well as the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, Pribilofs, and the western Aleutians, and especially the central areas look pretty good. Conditions starting to come down way out there toward Chimney-Attu with the next system. And Tuesday morning, that IFR with that next system out toward the Komodorskis pushes into the far western Aleutians, otherwise marginal VFR eastward to about King Cove, Cold Bay, Nelson Lagoon area to roughly west of Port Hayden is the IFR area, then on to the northeast to King Salmon, marginal VFR. And then IFR zone extends up across Togiak Bay, across southern Kuskokwim Valley, and along the Alaska Range, or maybe in the northern Susitna Valley, a little bit marginal for Cook Inlet. IFR, northern and western Prince William Sound, and the Panhandle, VFR over the southern 3/4, and then some marginal and IFR conditions for the northern quarter, and some IFR still along the North Slope and the eastern Arctic coast. For Tuesday afternoon, IFR right along the Arctic coast there with marginal VFR into the North Slope. Brooks Range, the western central areas look VFR. That'll extend southward across Selawik, Kobuk Valleys, Kotzebue, as well as the northwest interior to Norton Sound, VFR for the afternoon. Also the southeast interior, VFR right down to the North Gulf Coast. IFR spreads over the southern Panhandle, stays VFR Lincoln Island, Glacier Bay, and marginal VFR for the eastern Bering Sea, eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, swath of VFR to the west of that, and then marginal VFR shimmy in Attu. And Atuvik tomorrow, IFR becoming marginal, same forecast for Adigan. IFR times early, then a little bit of improvement into the afternoon. Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR, rainy VFR. Windy, same forecast, VFR. Good day for Isabel as well, VFR. Mentesta starts out marginal, becoming VFR. And for Tanita, VFR. Portage, IFR, especially on the eastern approach, otherwise marginal at times. And Chilkoot and White, IFR. For the freezing levels, 6,000 feet, warmer air aloft into the southwest interior, 2,000 feet, Yukon River out toward the northern Kobuk Valley, and then diving southward all the way to the western Aleutians. Icing, areas of spotty areas of considerable moderate rime icing there for the Prince William Sound area south of the Kenai Peninsula, and not much of an icing threat tomorrow for the southeast coast, but the chance of some isolated moderate does exist, especially over the northern areas. And for the jet stream here, strong 140, 160 knot jet right across the southern southeast coast there, and much lighter, more variable winds over the interior, and northwesterlies pretty strong, 120 to 150 knots out over the western Aleutians, 9,000 feet, good flow from the southwest into the Panhandle, and at 3,000 feet, west-southwest again, 60 knots max there south of Cape Yakataga, lighter in across the southeast coast, north-northeast, 40 knots, Nunivak Island down to the eastern Aleutians, lighter winds out to the west with ridging ahead of the next system. Turbulence, light to isolate moderate chop lingers over northern Lynn Canal, maybe Glacier Bay, otherwise light to isolate moderate chop for the northern Panhandle of Prince William Sound.
We can't just put the fires out because we can't put them out. We've tried that now for a century, and it doesn't work. It just makes the next one worse.
You may see a place like this and think, total devastation. And it's not your fault for thinking that.
But that depiction is, as we've learned from countless experts over the last 2 weeks, not the whole story, and not how you should think about wildfires.
The truth is, there are lots of types of habitats out west, and fire affects them all in unique ways. So it's important to start thinking about the big picture with wildland fires. So let's first rewind. To help us understand what's going on out west, Rob and I started calling up the experts, and what we found was that the story of fire, particularly in the west, is complex. So to understand it, we planned a road trip.
Road trip time!
The goal of our road trip was to see as many forests as we could and meet experts around the region to help us understand the role fire plays out here. First destination was to find the forest burned by the now famous Great Fires of 1910. And at the heart of what is known as the Big Blow-Up, the logical first place to stop, the city of Wallace.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi. Good. Haley and I are in this cute town of Wallace, Idaho, which was completely destroyed by the 1910 fires. You can see how much damage this fire actually did. Let's send up the drone and see what the surroundings look like now. What we found was a small town surrounded by a dense forest, with every single tree just over 100 years old.
So everything we see behind us now, that's all new growth since 1910.
And to help us put these historic fires and the forests around Wallace in perspective, we met up with historian Diane Smith.
This is Wallace, and here are your fires.
All of this
is the 1910 fires?
This is not that unusual. The fact is, it just was at a time in our development as a country. We noticed it, we paid attention to it, and we got the national attention for it.
As it turns out, these fires helped reinforce the idea at the time that every fire needed to be suppressed at all costs. And this suppression for so long has led to new problems, namely thick forests full of fuel. But don't just take my word for it. Let me show you the difference.
Notice how different this place is than this one that has been thinned out quite heavily in the past, or like an area like this that's been burnt quite frequently.
In fact, both of these areas show how many forests would have looked in the past under regular burns. The dead and low-growing material gets consumed easily by fire, very much unlike this forest, which has had fire suppression for over 100 years and could lead to a high-intensity fire.
And all of this dry, dead material, that's problematic.
So we went looking for a big fire and just followed the smoke.
Oh gosh, a huge crown fire. I gotta get this.
These high-intensity fires aren't great because in many forests they kill all the trees over a large area, even in forests that used to be very resistant to frequent fires. And nobody knows that better than the people that work in this particular forest.
There's green coming back, and I guess I've gotten somewhat used to it, and I still have hope that the entire Sierra Nevadas won't look like this, that we can maybe get ahead of it. So the fires nowadays can move from the surface right into the tree canopies really easily, where in the past, fires would have kept trees pruned, they would have kept fuel densities low. And so now you end up with a lot more high severity fires in the West than had a fire regime kept under its historic recurrence. This to me is more a lesson of fire exclusion and keeping fire out of the system. If we're keeping it out of when it would burn with a beneficial effect, it will burn, and the probability of it burning at an unbeneficial state is higher.
So again, this is where it's complicated. We thought if only we could stop the fires, we'd win the fight. But the fires like the King Fire here show that stopping the fires only made it worse. Add that to the fact that we're living closer than ever to these wild lands. So to help us understand the wildland-urban interface, we met up with CAL FIRE. And as we were pulling up to this neighborhood, one of the residents quickly came out to tell us about the latest fire.
Yeah, our biggest fear is fire. It was very scary. I mean, everybody was honking and get out, and you know, there's a fire.
This is the risk across California. The response piece alone isn't going to solve this challenge if the homeowners aren't organized.
Because we're all in the same boat. We're one match away from everybody losing everything. It's a real fear.
Literally, we could have that fire spread up in here within a matter of seconds.
Wow.
California is going to have fires. We're not going to stop all the fires in California, so we have to have an infrastructure that's fire resistant. We need to work on policies that help us engage in active management of our forest. That's using prescribed fire as a tool. It's all the things in the toolbox. It's a combination of managing our forest and a combination of protecting our communities that are in them.
If it wasn't complicated enough, this made it very clear that you can't just let the fires burn whenever they start. The forests need to be managed to help mitigate the risk to us. But using fire seems to be one of the keys to making things safer, and knowing the science behind fire is always key to implementing good management.
Fire Sciences Lab, right over here.
So we made a stop at the Missoula Fire Lab to try to understand what we know about fire.
You see the flames at the very top and how they're sticking to the slope?
They really are. Everybody's laying down.
They're laying down. Well, that's flame attachment. Actually a very difficult thing to understand.
Here at the Fire Lab, the scientists study the basics of fire. Understanding the complexities here helps firefighters and forest managers in the field better predict and fight wildland fires.
Fires are inevitable. The only choices that we really have is what kind of fire to have and when do we want it. And that's it. Almost? Ready. You're ready. Jason's ready.
Mark's team is prepping to light a huge bed of precisely cut cardboard.
You're not going to be in any danger. So when the lights go out, don't move. Gasoline.
This is one of many experiments they'll run to understand the physics of fire, how it moves, how it spreads, and all of this measured by precise scientific instruments and high-speed cameras. tens of thousands of pieces of cardboard up in flames in mere seconds. The ongoing research will help us better understand fire with the ultimate goal that we can live better with it. But can we do that? There is one forest we knew of that seems to have figured out this coexistence with fire, a place where fires burn all summer, every summer. It's part of their way of life and a mentality we wanted to know about. And here we went out with our guides Frank Lake and Steve Valentine, who work with the local U.S. Forest Service and tribe to help keep a healthy forest.
This is perfect. The fire's basically come through and cleared out the understory, and all that's left are the trees.
Yeah, it's black and it's charred, and you just see a few of the earliest sprouts, but you come back in here a year, it's going to be alive again.
And to many, this may seem destroyed, but they view it differently here.
That fire's medicine, because it's not if it comes, it's when it comes. We need fire, and fire needs us.
You see, fire needs people to remind us how important fire is to the ecosystem. Frank and Steve's ancestors have been burning this forest for millennia. It's now part of what makes the forest special. They just want to make sure that it's not forgotten.
Basically, what you leave behind is what's important.
When they say this is your foods and your medicines, your sacred places, your springs, your water, that's essential, that's who we are as people. We have to learn to live with fire. We have to learn to respect fire. We have to maintain that security. That's why I do what I do.
Haley and I have learned a lot on our journey. We've learned that fire is complicated, and it's not as black and white as we make it out to be, and it is an integral part of our forests. They've had fire running through them for thousands of years, and they will continue to have fire in them in the future. And we can't always put the fires out. We have to decide what kind of fires to live with, and that is why we need to work with these fire crews from around the country. We also need a public who understands the importance of fire on the landscape. A healthy forest, you see, is a forest that lives with fire.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at the coastal water forecast for the Panhandle. Much lighter winds in store for the southern Panhandle tomorrow. Southerlies at 10 knots, southeast 30 knots, northern Lynn Canal. Southwest 30 to 40 knots on the north coast there, with seas still in the 25 to 27 foot range. And then for Tuesday, small craft advisories along the coast with gales on the extreme north coast there. East 35 up that way, 12 to 13 foot seas. And southeast to 25 on the south coast with 11-foot seas. Inside waters, kind of a variable wind pattern there. Southeast at 15 for Clarence Strait, northwest at 10 for Stevens Passage, north 15 for Lynn Canal. And for Prince William Sound, south winds 15 knots. Cook Inlet southerlies at 10 knots. Small craft advisories for the western North Gulf Coast and the Barren Islands. Southwest winds 25 to 30 knots. And gale warnings for the eastern North Gulf Coast there. Southwest 35 knots with 26-foot seas. Moving on to Tuesday, back to storm warnings there for the western North Gulf Coast and the Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay, as well as southern Cook Inlet. For southern Cook Inlet, be out of the northeast, sustained 50 knots, 20-foot seas. East 55 knots for Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands. And 45-knot winds out of the east there for the eastern North Gulf Coast. Prince William Sound, northeast, 25 knots with 4-foot seas. And for Kodiak Island for Monday, southwest winds 22-30 knots with west-northwesterlies at 20 knots across the Alaska Peninsula. North winds 15 there for the Bristol Bay area. And then for Tuesday, Kodiak Island, storm warnings. East-northeast, 50 to 55 knots, and that'll extend all the way to Castle Cape. The Alaska Peninsula, gale warnings, northerlies 40 to 45 knots with seas 10 to 22 feet, and for Bristol Bay, northeast 45 knots with 10-foot seas. And for the western Aleutians, southeast winds 25 knots tomorrow, northwest 25 knots for the eastern Aleutians, central Aleutians northwest at 20 and 15 knots for Amchitka. Then on Tuesday, small craft advisories for all the Aleutians. Fox Islands 25 to 30 knots out of the north with 6 to 10-foot seas. Adak and Atka, north to northwest, 25 knots with 7-foot seas. And then 30-knot winds there from Kiska to Shimia from the east. For the southwest coast tomorrow, look for north winds at 25 knots. Same thing for the Pribilofs and northerlies at 25 knots with 9-foot seas, and northwest 25, 7-foot seas for St. Lawrence Island, and north at 15 for Norton Sound. And for Tuesday, north or east to northeast, 10 knots for Norton Sound and St. Lawrence Islands. So pretty light winds up that way with 2 to 3 foot seas. And for the Yukon Delta coast, northeast winds at 20 knots, 5-foot seas, and that'll extend right out to St. Lawrence Island, northern Bering Sea as well. South of Nunivak Island, we've got small craft advisories there for northerlies at 30 knots with 7-foot seas, and northwest winds at 25 knots with 8-foot seas for the Pribilofs. Up to the Arctic coast, for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, there we've got northeasterlies at 15 knots, east at 10 to 15 knots for the central and west coast, and then 20-knot winds there from Wales up to Cape Thompson with 5-foot seas. And then those areas will be pretty light, much lighter on Tuesday, southeast at 10 or variable to southeast 10 from Wales to Cape Beaufort. And for the eastern and central Arctic coast, we've got east winds at 10 knots with 2-foot seas in the west side, east at 15 with seas of 3 feet. For tonight, again, high wind warnings end early this evening for the central coast of the Panhandle as well as the inside waters, a little later this evening for the Juneau area, but then kick into effect this evening into tomorrow morning for the Lynn Canal Glacier Bay Area Klondike Highway for winds gusting 60 miles an hour with rain moderate to heavy at times, but trending toward diminishing wind and rain the entire area throughout the night. Stays wet along the North Gulf Coast, a little breezy. Rain changes to showers for Kodiak Island. Stays dry with increasing clearing. Cook Inlet, no change over the interior. Chance of light snow with a weak trough there for the eastern North Slope and Arctic coast. And stays breezy and unsettled out over the eastern Bering Sea. High pressure farther to the west will gradually move eastward tomorrow ahead of the next frontal boundary. And looks like low pressure will move inland and weaken over the southeast interior tomorrow with high pressure developing over the Panhandle. And the next day, next storm rolls up, bringing again the storm force winds we saw in the marine forecast, the Kodiak Island area, and rain into the southern Panhandle with that warm front, and a weak trough with some showers over the southwest interior, but dry eastern interior and the northwest and central part of the state with a few isolated flurries along the eastern Arctic coast, showers over the eastern Aleutians, dry with light winds central.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.